Hi, my fellow screenwriting enthusiasts. It's Paul from Small Town Movie Critic. And if you're new to the channel, we're all about helping you write that kick-ass screenplay by giving you tips, tools, inspiration, and of course, product reviews. Now, in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to conquer one of a writer's deadliest enemies, which is writer's block. Now, the way that we're going to squash writer's block is through outlining. Now, one of the things that has stopped me a lot in my tracks with writing was running out of creative ideas. You see, I'd start with an awesome idea and just think to myself, well, the rest of it will come as I start writing. So I'll be typing away. And then all of a sudden, I would just hit like a figurative wall. I couldn't think of how the story would be progressed. I don't know how it would end. And I can't tell you the number of scripts I abandoned because of hitting this wall of writer's block. So in this series of videos, I will outline, no pun intended, some ways to give you a lot of material to sort through instead of being stuck without any ideas and with not knowing what direction to go in. Now, in writing my first draft of a 100-page script, one of the things that really helped me to get to this final destination was by sticking to an outline. Now, I know outlines are very controversial when it comes to writing. You see, I know some people really love them and swear by them, while other people think they inhibit their creativity too much. Well, I'm going to be telling you the method that had worked for me. And as always, you need to discover what method works best for you. So the reason I really like to make an outline is because it allows me to know what's next. Now, if you think of your script as a road trip, it's always good to know the final destination, right? It's hard to plot the best pathway if you don't know where exactly you're going. And this is why I think an outline is important, because it helps you to create a path to where you start at to where you end up with. So let's take a look at a 5-step process on how to make an outline. So number 1, keep the end in mind. As we've talked about, what does the end of your script look like? What is that closing scene? What is that closing feeling you want the audience to be left with? What happened to the characters in the end? Now, knowing these things helps create some sense of story arc as well as character arc. Now, if your main character ends the movie as this courageous leader, then probably at the beginning of the movie, you probably should show them that he or she is some sort of ordinary person, one who's afraid, and maybe one who's more comfortable with following than with leading. Now, by doing this type of exercise, when you think about the ending, first, it helps you figure out how that story actually begins and what scenes you can add in to help show that progression through time. Second part of the outlining process, sketch the story. Armed with this ending and beginning, you can now begin sketching your ideas for your story. Now, write a list of everything you know about your story. Now, this is not the time to be self-critical. Now, you probably came to this step with a handful of ideas already, so I'd invite you to write them down. And then even if you have no idea how these scenes will play out in the story, again, write them down. As I've said in many of my videos, the biggest thing to do is just don't keep them up in here. You need to put them on the page so that you can free up more space in your RAM up in your mind to help have the ideas flow. And again, at this point, your primary goal is just to remember and record every idea you have in relationship to the story, because you never know when one of these ideas will spark another idea. Now, once you finish with this step, take a moment to review your list, and whenever you encounter an idea that raises a question, you can take a highlighter or highlight it or put an X next to it. Now, if you don't know why if you don't know why your character is screaming at somebody in one scene, highlight it. If you don't know how two scenes will eventually connect, highlight them. If you can't picture the setting for one of your scenes, highlight that too. And by pausing to identify possible plot holes now, you'll be able to save yourself a ton of rewriting later on. And plus, it might help you generate a new scene at that particular point, which you can just plug in at that point. Now, your next step is to address each of these highlighted portions one by one. Now, write out your ideas and let your ideas flow. Again, your internal critic is probably going to pop up and say, nope, you need to cross those out. Those are horrible suggestions. But I want you to remind your critic that this is not the time for that to happen. The critic will get a chance to strike down those ideas, but not before you get them on the page. Because I really want you to unleash your creativity and plumb the depths of your story's potential. Ask yourself questions on the page. Talk to yourself, and don't worry about punctuation or spelling. Don't worry about it being perfect right now. It's a first draft. And every time you think you've come up with a good idea, take a moment to ask yourself, will the audience expect this? And if the answer is yes, maybe write a list of other alternative scenes for your audience so they won't expect it to go this particular way. So step 3, who are my characters? Let's head back to the beginning and start interviewing our characters. What are some adjectives that you can use to describe them? Now, I'm not just talking about physical adjectives, because if that's important for your story, great. But I want you to figure out who they are. Are they a hopeless romantic? Are they depressed? Are they selfish? Now, how does that come to play into the storyline? Is there a scene that you can write that will highlight this trait? Is there a scene that needs to be added because of these traits? Now, let's say that there's a hopeless romantic and they break up with their partner. You'll probably guess there's going to be a scene of them trying to get back into their partner's good graces, right? So ask yourself, what events have led the characters to this beginning point in your script as well, and write those events down. Look at the web of character relationships and how did the characters interact with each other at the beginning of the movie, and how do they interact with each other at the end? And in order to get from point A to point B, what will the scenes be that you need to write out that will help fill in those gaps of how they relate to each other at the beginning of the film and how they relate to each other at the end of the film? Step 4, we're going to ask, where are we? We have questions about setting. Now, whether your setting is your childhood neighborhood or the moon of Endor, you'll want to enter your first draft with a firm idea of where your prominent scenes are going to take place. Now, don't choose a setting just because it sounds cool or because you're familiar with it. Look for settings that will be inherent to your plot. Can you change your story's primary location without any significant alterations to the plot? If you can do that, I want you to take some time and dig a little deeper to find a setting better suited to your plot, theme, and characters. Now, based on the scenes that you're already aware of, list the settings you think you'll need. And so I want you to have a nice list. Again, don't self-censor yourself with getting the list out. And once you get this list out, I want you to take a look at this list, and I want you just to ask some simple questions. Can you reduce this list by combining or maybe eliminating a setting? And the reason for that is, again, each time we add a new setting, we're adding to the overall price of the movie because they have to shoot in that new location. But more importantly, I want you to think about, we only get 100 pages to tell our full story. So we have to use each page to the fullest. So if we're constantly skipping to new settings, we could be potentially diluting our movie. And if it makes a big difference to be in that location, to yes, indeed, include that location. But if it doesn't, what if we had it in a location that we already had? Step 5, and the final step for writing, is basically writing the outline. Now I want you to take a sheet of paper and write out 1 through 100 by 5. So like 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Now leave some space between each of these numbers so you have some space to write in, or you can do it in Word or something like that. Now, based on what we've done before, I want you to take and write a single word at all the numbers except for 1, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And for these last numbers, I'm going to have you write a sentence. Now, the word that I'm going to have you write next to 5, 10, and 15 is a word that's going to basically tell you what's going on in that scene. So if it's a breakup, you write the word breakup. If it's a scene where they go to the park, you would just write park. Now, the reason why I'm having you write a little longer sentences at 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100 and 1 as well too, is because those are big major milestones within the movie. By 20, you're going to want to have that inciting incident where something happens that changes the character's life. And then there's other things as you look for, like page 60, I think is near the midpoint. 100 is the end. 80 is you're beginning to enter Act 3 into the climax. So there's all these different, so that's why I want those numbers to have a little bit more like a sentence. You can still put a word in there, whatever works for you. And what the reason why I'm having you put a word or sentence in is they're basically going to act like guardrails and keep you on task to finish your initial story. And don't worry, this is just a rough first draft. You'll have plenty of chances to rewrite your story after this, but using this method you have outlined, your story will help you defeat writer's block because it's going to keep you on those guardrails. You're going to know what you're going to need to write to. So if you're in the middle of page 6 and you look and say, well, I don't know what to write next, you can look at that mile marker in 10 and see what that word is. And if it's like breakup, okay, well, I need to write so they'll break up on page 10. And then you can look at the next mile marker for page 5 where they're going to go for a ride. Okay, they're going for a ride. So how do I get them from this breakup to the ride? And so you have those things that help push you along in the story and keep moving you forward in those stories. And so there you go. Now, if you're in need of helping to break writer's block, give outlining a try. I bet it'll get you back on track and writing in no time. Now, if you found this video useful, please hit the like and subscribe button, and remember to keep writing, and I'll see you in the next video.